Okay. Sorry about that. I have no idea it was working and then it wasn't. So
No worries, but we're here. Thank you so much for joining me, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm
Today,
fine.
today's a big day.
Yes, it is a big day. We have a hearing coming up in City Council in the Energy and Environment Committee. And we're hoping that they take some meaningful steps to, after all these years, to do something to protect public health and protect Angelinos from, the harmful effects, to say the least, of urban oil drilling right here in the city.
Yeah, so for folks that are just tuning in on Twitter and on Facebook, and actually we're also on Twitch now. We went real professional. We were trying to do things a little bit differently. So thank you so much to all of you, and thank you so much for bearing with us. You can feel free to post questions on the comments and your impressions. And maybe what we need to do is start from the beginning. And can you tell us a little bit about the history of urban oil drilling? Because, for example, in my community, some people don't even know that this is a practice happening in next to people's homes, hospitals, daycares, restaurants. So would you walk us through the history of what urban neighborhood oil drilling in Los Angeles looks like?
Yeah, well, I don't know how many people know this. The history of oil drilling in Los Angeles is much more than 100 years old. So it began somewhere in the late 19th century or so. And the way it has come about and developed, it has now made Los Angeles the largest urban oil drilling field, so to speak, in the country. There are over 1,000 active wells in the city, and hundreds of thousands of Angelinos live within less than a quarter mile of these sites. So it really began at a time. Los Angeles was a much smaller city, right, back in the late 19th century. But they started the oil drilling, and it has continued since then, and it has continued in neighborhoods mere feet away from parks and homes and schools and things like that. And unfortunately, though not surprisingly, given this country's history around racial justice, the majority of those sites are located in low-income communities of color.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and this is why we say this is an issue of environmental justice. This is why environmental justice is about racial justice, because it's not just a harmful impact on people, it is disproportionately impacting people of color, BIPOC communities in Los Angeles. And so that's where we're at right now. And that's what the Stand LA campaign is about. It's about uplifting public health and putting people over profits. It's about talking about, what can we do to transition to a green economy, a healthy economy, right? And to really stop this binary that the fossil fuel industry keeps kind of shoving into our faces, that, you have a choice between your job or your health, your home or your health. And that's a false choice, right? Because people deserve to have it all. They deserve to have healthy, affordable housing. They deserve to live in a community that is healthy, that is free of these types of industrial uses and industrial harms to health, right? So that's what Stand LA is all about.
Beautiful. And it's sad to see how our communities have to fight back all of these environmental injustices, in fact, in order to just have a normal life. So for those of you that are watching, you might be thinking, well, why do they live there? I have been told that. Why do you live 3 blocks away from an urban oil drilling site? For a lot of us, this is our community. For a lot of us, this is the place we were born, we would call home. And for a lot of us also, is the place that we can afford.
Right.
Los Angeles being a city that is so expensive, we see the amount of unhoused folks on the streets every day, and especially now with the pandemic, we're going to see it more. We see the struggles of racism in an environmental way, and also in a social way, and a racial way as well. How did you get involved in this work and working for Esperanza? Maybe you can also tell us a little bit about what Esperanza community is.
Yeah, and before I go into that, I wanted to add a bit to this, which is it's so misleading when people say, why would you choose to live in this place? Because the fact is that people have been living here for centuries. And people were already living here when these companies came in and started extracting.
Right.
So when you're talking about why do you choose to live here, let's ask ourselves, who are our neighbors? Are we good neighbors? And are the people around us good neighbors to us? And the fact is that the fossil fuel industry categorically has not been a good neighbor to people in the neighborhoods where they have come in. And doing this. So with that, I'm going to just shift a bit to Esperanza Community Housing. So it's a social justice nonprofit in South Central, and we began as a provider of healthy, affordable housing in Los Angeles because we saw what was happening with the serial displacement of BIPOC communities, right? With industries coming in or disinvestment happening as well, right? And so that's how we began. And we did a lot of organizing alongside community members. And in doing that, really, I mean, it's inevitable, to say that housing is both a health and human right. And it's not just about, our ability as an affordable housing provider to house people in our buildings, but also we have a responsibility to the community and neighborhood that we are in, and to that environment. So we have a responsibility to make that entire community as healthy as possible, or rather contribute to it, in terms of public health. So with that, we began, our Promotora program, which really is about recognizing that people in the community are the ones who really hold the expertise on what's happening there, on what it means to be healthy and safe in that community, rather than others coming in to prescribe it. Through that organizing, then we started seeing like the displacement of local small businesses as well. And so that's how we began Mercado La Paloma.
Yeah.
Which is all about providing a community space, right, where community can gather, where there is celebration of the culture, of arts, and where there's an opportunity for local entrepreneurs, to also stay in their community. And that's what Mercado La Paloma is about. And then through all of this, right, we suddenly started hearing, and this was around 2011 or so, from employees who lived in the area and from residents in our buildings, that there was something in the air, some strange smell, rotten eggs. People were feeling sick. There was an increased incident, or rather, there was an increased incidence of respiratory illnesses, not just in children, but in adults as well. And so, we all just kept wondering, what is this about? And in doing that, it finally came to light that right across the street from several of our buildings was this company called Alanco. And they were operating and doing oil extraction activities behind these really high walls. And their gates were always closed. So no one really knew what it was. But they're right next door to schools, to parks, and homes, right across the street from homes. And so, and we just happened to discover that it was pure coincidence. One of our employees and her child were walking past, and the gates were open, and an employee said, "Hey, would you like to come in and see what's in here?" And he gave them a tour of the site. And
without knowing that these were residents of Esperanza.
Exactly.
Wow.
But I think that also goes to a larger issue with the fossil fuel industry, which is that they're showing up as bad neighbors, but the fact is they're also showing up. I mean, they're causing a lot of harm to their own employees as well.
Absolutely. And they're putting, if you can just allow me, because I want to make this point, is very important. Because in environmental justice, we always advocate and fight for a just transition for workers.
Exactly.
We also know that they're victims. And I really hope that as we head to this transition, that unions also cry with us and scream with us and stand with us on this demand of a better life for our communities, because it's also their employees that are affected by this issue. Yes. And we see over and over sometimes seeing the environmental community and the environmental justice community and on the other side of labor. And this shouldn't be this way. It should actually be something that we're working coordinated and we're working together, moving towards the same place. So I just wanted to add that because I think it's such a great anecdote that a person that was in there was actually welcoming, showing members of the community what was going down in there. So, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, that and that's so true. I mean, we anyway, let me go back to that. So that's how we discovered that there's this, you know, bad operator or bad neighbor, as we say, right, on that land. And of course, what surprised us even more as Esperanza kept digging into this is it's not that Alanco owned the land on which they were operating. They were leasing the land from the LA Archdiocese.
So it's an even deeper issue now.
Exactly. So it just keeps going deeper and deeper. But here's the thing. What this really revealed was not just, it seems like a systemic failure to really uplift public health, especially when it crosses with racial justice and you're looking at low-income communities of color being impacted. But what you're also looking at is a broken regulatory system.
Yeah.
Right? Because as residents and as we as Esperanza were going to the different entities, right? There's the city, there's the county, there's the state, there's the South Coast Air Quality Management District.
Yeah, it's a very challenging place,
right? You would think that they would have some say, you know, some ability to regulate this, but from each one we kept hearing a similar story, which is that we can't do anything. You know, AQMD actually had the power to do more, but their own policies at the time kind of stood in the way.
Yeah, and the AQMD, for those of you that are watching, AQMD stands for the Air Quality Management Board in Southern California. They're the regulators that make sure that our air is good for us, and a little more, but just to keep it very simple.
And a little more. They're also one of the few AQMDs throughout California that doesn't have maintaining public health as one of the parts of their mission.
Just
and that says a lot, right? Because that's what the community was experiencing. People who should have been able to step in to do something about this, saying that they didn't have the power or the authority to do so. And this is a community, as you pointed out, that's already living at the intersection of cumulative harms, cumulative systemic harms, right? A lack of an adequate stock of healthy, affordable housing, of good jobs, of access to transit, access to health services, you know, access to so much, right? And now this, that just reveals so much more, right? And what am I trying to say? But the community organized around this, and through this, at Esperanza, our environmental justice program really came out of this, and it's called People Not Pozos. And through that organizing, we actually garnered the attention, you know, not just of the media, but through the media of then Senator Barbara Boxer as well. And two things happened with this. The first is, at the time, the big story in the news when it came to fossil fuel extraction was about fracking. We need to stop fracking, ban fracking, all this other stuff. But that does not match the reality of the type of extraction that's happening in LA. Banning fracking would not really help what was happening in LA, because that's not really what was happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And so through People Not Pozos, through the community organizing that residents did, we were able to switch the narrative, from what the fossil fuel industry kept saying, right, about jobs and revenue and all of this. We were able to switch it to, but this is about public health. Public health for everyone, right? Which is where we also talk about just transition. So we were able to do that. And then Senator Barbara Boxer got the US EPA involved and had them come and visit the site as well. And actually, while her staff, the LA County Department of Health staff and all were touring the site, they actually fell sick while touring the site itself.
Wow.
Right, so this was almost exactly 7 years ago. This was like November. It was 2013. At that point, Alanco voluntarily shut down. They said, look, we're going to shut down. We're going to fix all the problems and open back up. As they did so, AQMD stepped up, LA County stepped up, the city attorney's office stepped up, and from the state, they also stepped up and put all these conditions in place and said, you have violated XYZ, you need to correct this before you reopen.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. What the community knew, what we knew, is that this isn't a matter of mitigating harm. There is absolutely no way where oil extraction can ever be compatible with human health. So we never wanted them to reopen. And
why did they reopen? And how come we live in a city like Los Angeles that claims to be an environmental leader of the world, where we have a mayor that is the head of the C40? This is an organization of elected officials from around the world that work on environmental issues, where we have a public utility that is accountable to us, the people of Los Angeles. How is it possible that after we find out that this is harmful to people, they were able to reopen?
Right. Well, first of all, they were never actually able to reopen. They tried, but they couldn't. They've never met the standards. And most importantly, this last summer, the city attorney actually brought criminal charges against Alanco because they hadn't complied with the various orders. But effectively, that was following up from an order earlier this year, which effectively did shut down the company because they weren't able to comply with the various health and safety codes that were being required of them. So that's good. But the second part to your question, you're right. How is it that LA, that touts itself as a leader on so many things, including environmental justice or climate change, how is it that they're allowing this? And I would just say that the fossil fuel industry is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, we need to see where that money is going, right? What that's all about.
And also a big part of us having this conversation, and the reason why I wanted to do a live stream, is because today you guys are having a Twitter storm to bring attention to this issue. And it's important. And sometimes some of us don't like social media, some of us love social media, but this is the way that we can utilize social media for a good cause, for something that is better, for not just showing, vain things or vanity, but something actually that is helpful to our community. So tell us how, because this isn't done, and organized people are stronger than organized money. And we know that they have money, and we know that they have put elected officials on power. I was a candidate for city council in the last election, and this was one of my main issues. My main issue was we need to pass a buffer and beyond. We need to do more. We need to bring benefits to communities that have been affected by this issue for so long. They need to be benefited first. And the fossil fuel industry utilized a bunch of money against me. So this isn't a myth. This is not happening somewhere else. This is happening right here.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what's going on today at the City Council.
Yes. So what's happening today? But before I go there, I think the other pieces with this money, what they've been able to do is put their binary, their false choice front and center. That we're going to lose jobs, that the city is going to lose revenue, that all this stuff is going to happen. They've basically done a smoke and mirrors tactic, right? Because we're talking about, this isn't just shut it all down and that's it. This is about justice. This is about racial justice. It's about economic justice, environmental justice. So we're talking about doing a just transition to a green economy where oil well plugging and remediation is paid for by the fossil fuel industry. And that, in fact, can create jobs, it can improve health, and it does benefit communities, right? And what this means is these industries need to invest in remediation and invest in programs that will transition their workers into healthier, better paying jobs.
Yeah.
Right. But they're saying, if you shut us down, we can't do anything. And that is what we are trying to really counter with our Twitter storm today, as well as, when we show up to give public comment in this hearing that's going to be at 1 o'clock.
Today in Los Angeles at 1 o'clock. You're watching, you have a chance to help this campaign, to help Stand LA, to help Esperanza, to help so many people that are affected by environmental racism right now happening in LA. We have Nuri Martinez, who is the head of the City Council in Los Angeles and also is the head of the Environmental Justice Committee of Los Angeles. So how can people join if they want to support and if they want to give comments today?
Well, there are several things. So I think the easiest, hopefully, if you're watching this, then you have some social media accounts. If you follow Stand LA on Twitter, you should be able to find the instructions to either call the council members directly or to call into this office. We also ask that you amplify, so retweet, post, all the tweets that are happening, let people know that this is happening. Tag your council member in it. Let them know, whether or not they're part of this committee, they're on city council, and eventually this will go to city council. And what we're really hoping, and this is the big ask, which I don't think I've mentioned yet, Stand LA, we are asking for the city to implement a 2,500-foot health and human safety buffer between oil extraction sites and, where the rest of us work and live and play. This should not be controversial. This should not be controversial, especially because this is accompanied by additional strategies around the just transition, right? Around workforce development and around uplifting public health. And this really goes hand in hand with so much else that our communities are experiencing, especially at this time when you think about the pandemic and how these same communities have been facing the brunt of the economic impact of this pandemic. And they're facing the brunt of an economic impact of this pandemic with stay-at-home orders, having to live, what was that? A quarter of a mile away from where the fossil fuel industry is still conducting their oil extraction activities. We all have a responsibility to each other. And this is why we're showing up and demanding that our electeds live up to that as well. That they reject these false choices and these industrial activities that are making people sick and that are making our communities uninhabitable at a time when, in fact, we need more healthy, affordable housing and communities.
Absolutely. And this is when we see the intersection between housing and public health and environmental justice, all of them working together. Again, this is not something that is happening somewhere else. This is happening in our beautiful Los Angeles, where we have some of the most expensive zip codes in the world, the richest you know, the Hollywood, the glamour, the beach. You know, you think about Los Angeles, and for some of you that are watching or that are gonna watch this later, I'm sorry to break it down to you, but oil drilling is happening next to people's homes, hospitals, restaurants, daycares, schools, universities. You know, this is being well documented on other shows like Vice, like, I believe 60 Minutes did a little special on you guys. What are some of the health effects that all urban oil drilling has on people's health? I'm asking you because I share some of my opinions about urban oil drilling in my local next door, to let my neighbors know where they could find. In fact, I posted a map that you guys have on your website at Stanley's website. And some people mentioned that, as long as the oil wasn't running down the street, it was completely okay for oil drilling to be happening next to people's homes. So what are some of the side effects that people suffer when they have an oil drilling site next to their home?
Yeah. Well, I think what people miss is that the toxins are being released into the air and they're seeping into our ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we've seen, right? So some of the effects are headaches, nosebleeds, respiratory illnesses, possibly cancer. And this isn't just like I have a headache, I take Tylenol, I have a nosebleed, I'll just, put my head back. I can tell you just with Alan Co, at the height of what was happening, we had parents who were not sleeping at night. They stayed awake by their children's bedside to make sure of two things: respiratory illness, to make sure that their child did not suddenly just stop breathing in the middle of the night, and nosebleeds that were soaking entire pillows. These are just some of the health harms of oil extraction activities. And we have documented, through canvassing with our promotoras in the community, all this onset of illnesses that have increased at times when oil extraction has been happening. And more to the point, we have documented illnesses that children have developed that, quite frankly, they have no business developing at that age. Mm-hmm. We have documented people, including young children, dying of illnesses that they had no business getting at any point. And the fossil fuel industry will tell you there's no evidence-based research, there's no this, there's no that. You know what? Again, it's just more smoke and mirrors tactics. They have no business operating in our neighborhoods. They have no business poisoning our communities. And they have no business making these false claims just so that they can continue increasing their profits at the cost of our lives.
And yeah, and I think that it's important to also notice that this is impoverishing our communities even more. Because every time we have to go to the hospital, we have to spend money on getting better. We have to miss days of work. We cannot be as productive as others because they live in a healthier environment. That is also costing us as a community as a whole. So we're at a turning point where Councilwoman Nora Martinez, who is the first woman to ever be appointed to be the president of our board in Los Angeles, is such a great honor to say that she's another Latinx in our community doing that, and I have full confidence that she can do so much more. So the phone number of Nora Martinez's office is running in the stream right now, so you guys can see it. And at 1 p.m. we can all tune in the Environmental Justice Committee happen. Obviously, we cannot go to City Hall because we are on a pandemic. Stay home, people. Don't go to City Hall. But you can call and you can make your voice heard. And you can support Stand LA. So how can people find out more about your efforts at Stand LA?
Well, you can go to our Stand LA website itself, which is, I think it's just stand.la.
Yeah.
So
Stand.la.
Yeah, and you can get our campaign updates. I think you can probably also, I mean, we are always asking people to sign on as allies and supporters. And so, and that does take some stuff, right? We do ask you to read through our mission and, how we view things and things like that. And then we can add you to the listserv. But if you don't want to go through all of that, just follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's where all the information will be.
Enjoying right now the Twitter storm. This is us making it rain, basically.
Yeah.
We are making this Twitter storm rain for all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and for all your work, all your hard work. I know that Esperanza is such a beautiful place, and so many advocates have come out of there. And my dream is one day to be able to be, after the pandemic, when we can gather again and we can celebrate that finally we have a city that is going to be, hopefully in the future, completely fossil fuel free, and that we can really be the leaders that we say we are, and more. So, Rabella, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I know that it's not easy. I know that it makes you sometimes want to cry. It's tiring. And, it's interesting to see the women in the movement, people like you really carrying these campaigns forward. So for all of my men out there watching, we need you to step up and help us carry this forward through your networks, through your communities. This is how we also fight patriarchy, actually, that it shouldn't just be us, beating the drum. But this is a work that needs to happen for all of us. This is our job. So I hope that next time maybe I can get you on Instagram so we can have another combo there. But this was great. So at 1:00, call your custom member, call Nuri, her phone is here. Let her know that we're counting on her, that we got her back. If she's gonna do it, we got her back, that she's not fighting alone. Because as we demand our elected officials to step up for us, we need to make sure that they know that we're going to be there for them. And that's important too. And support the work of Stand LA. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I think this is all around now. I was on Facebook streaming, and also finally on Twitter. For those of you that bear with me on Twitter, thank you. You guys are amazing. And Rabella, thank you so much. I hope that we can have another conversation sometime soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Aura.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
So that was Rabella Sen from Esperanza. She's one of the partners of Stand LA. Please, guys, this is serious stuff. We need you. We need you more than ever. We need you to call your city council member. lacity.org has all of these resources. If you don't know who your city council member is, go support Stand LA. Go support that coalition. Stand up for something that is better, not just for some of us, but for all of us. I hope that you all have a great day, and we talk very soon. Bye-bye.